It's getting cold outside again, which for a lot of people means grueling commutes to work, Christmas, Hanukkah, misery. Depression is a subject that's depicted a lot of ways by a lot of media, but over the years I found the medium that's portrayed depression in the most relatable, critically thought out, fascinating way has been video games. Who saw this coming? Depression isn't just sadness, it's a deep emotional load that can cause you to feel empty, evade activities you used to love, and there are so many levels to this mental illness that allegedly affects more than 3.5% of the global population, and 20% of adults at least once in their life. But what we know depression to be today is not at all what it's always been viewed as. Let's talk a little bit about history for some context regarding an Oblivion quest. In the second millennia before the Common Era, depression was seen as demonic interference rather than a personal struggle, so priests would be the one to send aid to those in distress. So if you were a priest in ancient Greece, China, and Egypt, how would you comfort somebody who lacked love and motivation? Personally, I wouldn't drown them, but that seems to be how they did things at the time, even though there were further developments in mental health research by Hippocrates, for example, who suggested that the cure could be found within exercise, dieting, and bloodletting. Hey, wait a minute. The people still considered depression a result of God's wrath, and it continued to be treated with punishment. People with depression back then were miserable, I've no doubt, invisible, and probably felt really guilty from before the Common Era to even after the Middle Ages. In the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, which takes place in green-ass Cyrodiil, the hero will eventually find their way to the Shivering Isles, which is a literal representation of madness. On the Dementia half of the island, inside of this district known as Crucible, which is this dreary, dark part of New Sheoth, you can find this particularly miserable citizen, Hyrus Clytumnus, who is clearly suffering depression. In the fantastical Middle Ages, there was no real therapy, and nobody would take you seriously if you expressed feelings of depression, so Hyrus naturally feels very alone. In his own words, nobody believes him.
There's no point in talking about it.
Now, this quest certainly leans towards the unfortunate side of human consciousness, but comically subverts your expectations because instead of helping Hyrus out of his depressive state, you need to kill him, because if he kills himself, he'll be banished to the Hill of Suicides where the ghosts of self-inflicted murder are doomed for eternity. This quest also has one of the funniest dialogue options in history, definitely next to Persona 3. While there is a lot of comedy in this tragic venture, there is also a lot of truth within it, particularly in the rewarded quest item and how the Hill of Suicides is extremely similar to a real medieval concept. After you grant Hyrus' wish and send him to his death,
What? Oh.
you can collect your reward from his house, which is his will and, ironically, the Ring of Happiness. In his will, he describes his experience with the Happiness Ring as unnatural. A wizard gave it to him because Hyrus reminded him of his dead son, and the ring was said to lift the weight of the world off of his shoulders, but as Hyrus continued to wear it, it felt unnatural and not like himself, so he eventually took it off and never put it on again. I'm sure we've all had that universal experience of knowing somebody who had a problem, and you just think that you know the answer. Like, if you were in their shoes, you could solve that shit like Bleak Falls Barrow. I mean, unless you're this guy. Sure, the Ring of Happiness was the literal answer that Hyrus needed for his hopelessness to disappear. But the world he surrounded himself with every day was muggy, negative, and shrouded so deep into the realm of madness. A lot of the time, the struggles that people face are a result of their environment, and even though this quest is on the comical side of representing a serious issue, I think that its execution is something very real, and that you can't expect somebody to put on the Ring of Happiness that you designed when their world is so far different from yours. I mean, would you rather live in the main game or the fucking DLC? I don't want to be dead too. While Oblivion is nowhere close to a direct recreation of medieval Europe, there are certainly similarities. Around this time, suicide, if committed, would net you a few things. One, you wouldn't get a proper burial. And two, Catholic Mass would not be sung for anybody that committed suicide. Now, obviously, for most people in 2025, this wouldn't be that big of a deal, but back then, Catholicism was deeply rooted in European tradition. Like the 9 Divines in the Elder Scrolls series, dude. In England, people who died from suicide would be buried at a crossroads with a stake in their heart, and sometimes their bodies would be dragged through the streets prior to the burial. Not only was this punishment physically humiliating, but spiritually, it was supposed to confuse the ghost of the deceased, because when their spectral body emerged from their carcass, they wouldn't know where they were since they were bound to a crossroad in the middle of nowhere. The Hill of Suicides carries a lot of the same principles to how spiritually victims of suicide were seen around this time. In life, invisible, doomed to live out an existence of indifference or fear, and in death, sentenced to an eternity of wandering. But it's been like 190,895 days since the Middle Ages, and even though life kind of sucked at that time, at least people knew what their path was going to be in life from about the moment they gained consciousness. And as most of us know, it's not really like that anymore in a lot of countries, which has caused a mass wave of dread among young adults. I mean, really, I don't know whose idea it was to make it so you have to plan out the rest of your life when you're like 15, otherwise you're in for a brutal game of catch-up, but if at first you don't succeed, try again! Night in the Woods is another source of media that takes on the cute small town with a mysterious dark side trope, but the biggest mystery in Night in the Woods lies in its protagonist, May. May is a 20-year-old woman that, after spending her entire life preparing to go to college, dropped out in the 3rd year of it and moved back into her hometown. Throughout the game, you observe these characters with dreams and aspirations that May constantly disregards or downright dislikes. Like how when Greg, her childhood friend, talks about working towards moving away with Angus, or whenever Bea expresses her desire to go to college. In video games, it's common to have a main character that's relatable and generally centrist in their decision making so that the player can project themselves onto them. But May makes the game so hard to play sometimes because of her ignorance towards people with goals or problems of their own. One specific example of this is in one of the free roam conversations with an old acquaintance of May's, which is CJ from across the street, who during the events of Night in the Woods has become a lawyer. May opens some playful conversation with CJ, asking him how to effectively rob a bank, but as CJ continues to tell May that he can't answer those questions because that's not what he studied, she suddenly becomes emotional and says, "What's the point of going to college if you don't learn useful shit?" CJ replies with, "Laws are pretty useful," to which May retorts with, "Useful my ass, CJ." After this, there's this brief silence, and May disengages with an awkward apology. I love that this interaction isn't even a story-driven one with pressure to develop or emphasize character traits. It's just a raw, everyday breakdown that happened due to May's insecurity of leaving college and falling behind her peers. People with depression are often misinterpreted as self-centered, and in a way, their mindset is certainly centered on themselves, not because they idolize themselves like Devin Weston from GTA 5, but instead due to the fact that they're constantly worried that other people are judging them for their choices and behavior, which can result in desperate realistic outbursts like the optional one that May has when catching up with CJ. A lot of the time during these intense emotional moments, there will be 2 absolutely horrible dialogue options, and you'll have to choose between them to progress. But even though from the angle of an outsider looking into May's life, she's, really hard to tolerate, it does actually make her a realistic character. I'm sure we can all think about something we've said at one point in time that just like GTA 4's exaggerated swagger of a 30-year-old Russian man. And various aspects of the game help the player visualize and immerse themselves in the guilt that May feels. I like that the Home Again soundtrack, which is the theme that plays inside of May's childhood home for the first few days she's back, has a comforting piano track that almost feels adolescent with a weird distortion going on in the background that to me sounds exactly like the feeling of moving in with your parents after you've already moved out for a while before. It's the same house, it's comfy, it's safe, but at the same time, it's just not at all like it was before, and there's a lot of looming feelings of pressure that may not even be pushed onto you, but it's hard to disconnect from that due to the natural peer competitiveness that comes after graduating high school. And I think the soundtrack communicates May's situation really well. If or when you engage in conversation, you'll find that directed undertones come May's way quite a bit. A lot of the time they're harmless, but are just hurtful because of May's situation, and other times it's deliberate, like the old guy outside of May's house saying she's gonna be there forever, or her parents always asking about her employment situation. I feel like if you're still living with your parents after high school and not going to post-secondary, you probably should be making some source of income. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but I mean, objectively, that is a source of pressure. But at the same time, there's a lot of people like May who just won't get a job, which is, like very common. May in Night in the Woods is stuck. She prepared her whole life for something and then dropped out of it just because it wasn't right. She's back where she was when she was a teenager. The town is slightly different and the world has moved on, but she hasn't. I think Night in the Woods captures the stress of young adulthood so well. That feeling of watching your peers progress while you stand idle, having no idea where you want to go. It's not hard to see why May's mood shifts drastically whenever people start talking about the future. It's a mix of jealousy and envy. What's fascinating about May though is that, like I was saying before, the biggest mystery in the game isn't the murder mystery in Possum Springs. It's the question of, is May justified? Because even after beating the game, there is still no clear answer regarding May's past, and if her situation objectively is a result of trauma forcing her to return home, or if she just dropped out because she can't commit to anything, which is something that B hinted at, which I just love that line of dialogue, by the way. I thought that was so smart. Putting it boldly, there are two kinds of people with depression. There's living corpse people who just rot and don't do anything about their situation and typically blame it on external factors and resort to beating themselves up over actually trying to improve themselves or the situation they're in. And there's the people that work non-stop to distract themselves from the way they feel or their everyday life. Or they might be working so much to improve the life that they're not satisfied with. B, being a busy person with struggles, resents May, who in my opinion probably is the former. I love that dynamic. It is so unbelievably realistic. I think that if you're somebody who has a lot of mental issues but is still capable of getting things done, there's nothing more frustrating than knowing somebody who cannot commit to anything. There's nothing wrong with taking breaks. I mean, look at my upload schedule, but there's certainly something wrong with complaining and identifying with the issues that you have, yet not putting in the slightest bit of effort to improve them. No matter what though, starting from square one or being stuck and not starting at all is such a specific kind of dread that not a lot of media talks about or gets right when they do.
You ever feel like nothing good was ever gonna happen to you?
Yeah, and nothing did. So what?
However, through its soundtrack, dialogue, and environment, Night in the Woods captures idle depression so well. I think that as a Generation Zer, it's really easy to make a mistake once and feel like, well, my life's over and I'm gonna kill myself. But it's so much more complicated than that, and there's always room to pull yourself back on your feet. Like, if you haven't been exposed on the internet for doing anything with any kids or something, like, dude, you're good, you can come back. It's not really the same, but I met this guy in university who took 5 gap years and then decided to start because of his passion in history. One of the nicest guys I've ever met. There's never a time to not start. And outside of school, if you're an artist, there is so much you can do with the internet to spread your positivity and work. Obviously, it's not that black and white, but everybody has something special that they can bring to the table. And if anybody out there is feeling stuck, you should play Night in the Woods. And also, it is so far from over, bro. So obviously, in a YouTube video essay talking about depression, I'm going to talk about...
God, he's gonna talk about Cry of Fear! He's gonna talk about Cry of Fear!
What Remains of Edith Finch?
What Remains of Edith Finch?
Bro, it's a Just One End video. I've been waiting a whole year for Silent Hill F. The Silent Hill franchise is the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear depression in video games. Silent Hill 3 is some of the most incredible imagery and designs to reflect the anxiety that comes from being a teenage girl. A lot of the monsters are exceptionally large in comparison to Heather. Every adult, untrustworthy and sinister, and the games 1 through 4 are all like this. Every protagonist is going through something, and every game perfectly delivers an impactful narrative through symbolism and of course direct dialogue. But sometimes to deliver an impactful message, especially regarding a heavy topic, you kind of need to deliver it with subtlety so that the consumer is forced to think about it one way or another, instead of just acknowledging a topic or issue that was spoon-fed to you. Because then there's no need to think or reflect on it. Now, while I do believe Silent Hill F struggles to be unnerving in a lot of ways, the writers did something so experimental with its design, which is not the combat, by the way, that regardless of if you think it's a good implementation or not, perfectly encapsulates what depression is like, for better or for worse. Before I talk about that though, I just need to get the other aspects of this game out of the way. Where I believe Silent Hill F struggles the most is how it really doesn't try that hard to ground the player, which is what the horror genre is supposed to excel at. Horror games are some of the best sources of media to explore topics like depression, suicide, finding yourself, finding 8 pages, and the reason why horror games can explore these emotions so well is because they have the ability to bring the player down to that level by making them feel scared. Basically matching the player's dread with the characters through fear, so you can connect more with them on a humanistic level instead of just as an observer. In Silent Hill 2 Remake, for example, you're pretty vulnerable. James controls at a realistic human pace, and there is weight to his movement. When you do encounter enemies, especially in an enclosed space, it will make you uncomfortable in some way. The older Silent Hill games made you vulnerable through the tight camera angles, and some games like Outlast do it even better than that. Silent Hill F is not a game where you are vulnerable, because Hinako the Hedgehog maneuvers herself so fucking fast, but also there's a lot of instances instances where the video game just isn't trying hard to be authentically scary. In this area, for example, you are in a claustrophobic space with not a lot of wiggle room, but clearly it's not actually that linear. There's just a bunch of shameless invisible walls making the area confined. I need a key for this gate? Do I really? Because I swear I could just climb over this. But even though Silent Hill F certainly has its flaws, it did benefit in a massive way due to the writer having a history of visual novels, and that's how it realistically portrays depression through its gameplay, aka minor spoilers, but not really spoilers, skip here if you want to hear this. You have to beat the game 4 times to get the true ending. Silent Hill F is a cycle of pushing as hard as you can to get to the next objective. I played the game on hard mode, and I don't think I've ever been so annoyed at a video game before. And I mean, I played The Last of Us Part 2 on Grounded, and I loved it the whole way through, but Silent Hill F can be such a fucking slog. The bosses have a million health, and they reuse the same enemies about as much as Konami milks Pyramid Head. It's fucked. There's no other words for it. It's fucked. And you do all of this to get to a new playthrough where something might be slightly different. But it's kind of accurate though. Depression, like I said at the start of the video, isn't just sadness, it's a battle. It can feel like you're repeating the same grueling tasks over and over just for the chance to escape. It can feel like forever. Holy shit, it can feel like forever. But sometimes just being able to reach that point where you did it is a beautiful feeling. While I certainly have my issues with this direction, I have to respect the approach because I actually am very fond of this way of delivering a message. In The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, there's an arc where Haruhi, aka basically God, doesn't want summer vacation to end, so that same episode of summer vacation happens 7 more times, while the main character, Kyon, tries to break the cycle. The animators, writers, and voice actors redid everything from scratch for each episode, so it truly felt like a different timeline of the same day. When I finished this arc, it blew my mind. I thought the ending was so satisfying, and the amount of effort Kyoto Animation put into the Endless 8 era of the show was so impressive and impactful for the message. And Silent Hill F is no exception. It can certainly be a struggle, but the experience of surpassing each challenge gives you a sense of achievement that not many other things can, since they just don't make you feel as strange, for better or for worse. This is literally depression. Also, the reason why this relates to the writer of Silent Hill F being a visual novel writer is because in visual novels, it's a common trope for the player to have to replay them multiple times over to get a different or true ending. While laid to rest, Silent Hill and Night in the Woods explores what it's like to be somebody with depression, Grand Theft Auto 4 has a series of missions that comments on what it's like to be around somebody with depression, and the right or wrong ways of handling it. Kind of like B and May from Night in the Woods, but Rockstar up to the next level.
I want you to take that motherfucker out. Kill him? Well, I mean, damn.
In the case of depression, there is often the victim and the observer who tries to help the victim out of their misery, but ends up being frustrated due to their nihilistic mindset. South Park covers this excellently, but I'm Not Blooms, I'm a knockoff of Pro Jared, and Grand Theft Auto 4 is a sad game. GTA 4 is a grim masterpiece that covers the cycle of violence and how the American dream is nothing but an ideology that cannot be achieved without exploiting somebody else. You've watched a GTA 4 video essay before. But it also is a strand of missions that, despite being Grand Theft Autoized, are super down to earth. In GTA 4, Nico, the main character, comes into contact with a hustler by the name of Playboi X, and Playboi X started his criminal business under the influence of Dwayne, who got locked up in prison later on in his life. By the events of GTA 4, Dwayne is released from prison, but under the pressure and overwhelming changes in modern society, he struggles to find his place in the world and suffers immense feelings of hopelessness, which is really common in people who get out of prison because they don't know how to adapt to normal life again. So, I mean, that's a commentary on something else in itself. In the mission Undressed to Kill, where you invade a strip club in an effort to give Dwayne some street power back, he still complains at the end of it, like it's not enough, even though Nico pretty much did everything for him to make him feel better.
Nobody's gonna be partying up in your club anymore.
Playboi ain't gonna be happy.
What do you mean?
He still did business with the gangsters that took over.
God damn! Playboi X also helped Dwayne get back on his feet after leaving prison by providing him with an apartment and additional support, but even still, Dwayne stays negative. He stays lost in his emotional loop of depression. The world to Dwayne is not the same one that he knew before going to prison, and despite having support, he can't seem to see any good fortune that comes his way. So Playboi X is like, hey, Let's kill him. Rockstar did a super cool thing at this part of the game by letting you decide if you were going to settle this issue by killing Dwayne or Playboi himself. It's a real moral quandary. Playboi X is a criminal who clearly isn't that loyal, considering he wants to have his mentor killed over him being miserable, but he also said that he was going to build green spaces when he got rich.
When I get the money, man, I will build parks. I will sponsor kids.
Dwayne, on the other hand, sure, is a little bit insufferable to be around, but at the same time, he did just get out of prison and is just expected to fit in with modern society. Of course he's going to be upset. Like I said before, with depression, person A is going to be sad. Due to negative thoughts, they are going to have a negative outlook on life itself. Things they used to enjoy will become arbitrary. Their identity will somewhat be consumed by this extreme emotion. Person B will spend the mental energy to help person A out of their low and eventually grow impatient with person A's negative outlook because nothing will change them except them changing themselves and finding their own way out of it. And by the way, I just want to say that I don't think that you shouldn't talk to your friends about your problems. With depression, with mental illness, you should share that with people. It will make you feel better, even a little bit, if you talk to somebody about it. But if for an extremely long period of time, nothing changes and this person is constantly trying to help you or you're trying to help them, somebody is going to get impatient. And this is a fact. This is something that does actually happen. This is not me being insensitive and saying like, oh my God, this guy gotta stop whining about it. They gotta stop complaining. That is not what I'm saying. I totally support talking to people you know about struggles that you have. I love how GTA 4 explored this realistic and relatable aspect to living with somebody with mental illness and being somebody with mental illness and having to deal with the guilt of nobody around you understanding how you feel. Personally, I have killed Playboi X in all 3 of my playthroughs because his disloyalty rubbed me the wrong way. But what do you think is the right thing to do here? Going by GTA moral standards, of course. I mean, killing people is wrong, except her. Kill her. Grand Theft Auto 4 expertly portrays the loss of motivation and the effects it has on relationships spectacularly, like everything in this fucking good video game. But GTA 4 as a narrative is also a pretty hopeless game. I mean, the themes of the game center around subjects like the cycle of violence and hatred or indifference, and there's a general message that the game gives off, which is things never change. And while I do believe that it works as a video game story and commentary on conflict, of course, I can't say I think that that's completely true. Death Stranding takes place in a completely ruined and isolated world. The rain ages and kills everything it touches. There's goop monsters everywhere. Nobody's in contact with one another. Humanity is basically on its last toenail, and through all of that, you have to get things done. You need to reunite humanity by delivering packages. But basically, I love how Death Stranding pushes the concept of supporting each other as a community to get through hard times. Death Stranding is so overwhelming. You will have multiple orders due at one time, and you're expected to deliver them in a good condition while trying not to get rained on or lose balance on some random rock. But the more you get things done, the more easy and connected the world becomes. Norman Reedus will make deliveries, and over time you'll unlock more tools from those people you help deliver orders to make your adventures faster. It's a cycle of help. To me, there seems to be 2 major philosophies that come with depression. The world is doomed due to humanity's corruption, and it is impossible to live a happy life, and if you are, you're lying to yourself. The world has some bad apples in it, but we can still do the best we can every day to try and make the world a better place. GTA 4 is Thomas Hobbes, Death Stranding is Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and I am Ryan Gosling. I love depression in video games. I think that's such an interesting topic to delve into, and because video games are a coping mechanism, a lot of people that play them have probably experienced feelings of raw dread before. And the fact that you have to directly interact with these characters' experiences makes it all the more realistic and embraceable as a subject. A few weeks ago, I made a poll asking, what video game do you think explores depression the best? And I got a comment that said, no one plays games to be depressed. And to that I ask, do you even understand art? Nobody watches movies to feel things, they watch movies to be entertained. Imagine if Rockstar just cut out every sad moment in Red Dead 2 because it's not fun. Like, you can be entertained and take in a narrative at the same time, and video games are one of the best sources to suck a story from because you make an effect in that world one way or another, and you leave that experience sometimes a little different than when you went into it. Artistic expression is artistic expression because it's supposed to be relatable in a variety of ways, tugging on the strings of many different emotions. If the only emotion you ever feel is fun, tell me your secret, please. But what really makes me feel depression is when I don't get to hear what you guys think about all this. So what video game has impacted you emotionally the most? Let me know in the comments below and I'll check them out as soon as I possibly can. As always, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch this video, and And, don't look at me like that. Sorry for taking such a long break. I had one video essay that I was doing in September, and then I abandoned that like a month in because I realized it sucked halfway through. And after going through some pretty deep sadnesses in recent time, I thought, hey,